Welcome to the BuildTech podcast presented by Steer. This is a series of fireside chats with construction industry and technology visionaries where we deep dive into the intersection of construction and technology. Hosted by Arup Maidi, Carlo Mostoles, and Rama Kasai.
Hello everyone, welcome to the first episode of Construction Tech Chat that we are going to have often. And Carlo,
hi. Good afternoon.
So should be fun. And then we also have a special guest. We'll talk a lot about him in a bit. But Let's start by talking about why are we here? Like, what did we need this for, right? So, just a little bit on myself. I have been a civil engineer 30 years ago nearly. And I had a small stint of working as a site engineer in India and Nepal. And after that, I moved on to other areas, up to the management studies and all. And then I spent like 20 years on the technology and software front, digitizing different businesses. And when time to time, when I caught up with my friends and all, and even lately when we still visit some sites, it seems like the digital technology hasn't gotten in too much into the construction. Mm-hmm. And my thesis was in CAD, and apparently that's still one of the main technologies that everyone is using. It added a little bit of the Gantt chart on the project management side and a few things. And the biggest thing everyone talks about nowadays apparently is BIM. But when I talk to a lot of practitioners, not many are using it either.
Not at all.
Right? Yeah. It seems like there's a huge gap, and the purpose of this discussion and the series thereafter is to do a deeper dive into it. Of course, I have my own self-interest coming from as a founder of Steer, which is into construction tech. But we're not going to get into too much of Steer specific. What my purpose and all of us here want to know more about is technology in general and how it can help and why it has not been as widely adopted in all other industries. Because remember, construction is the second largest industry in the world. And it's like one of the least digitized. It's like actually just about the same as agriculture. Yeah. So that's surprising, right? With the budget and everything it has, you'd think that it would try to do, but yet it hasn't moved. So that's the purpose. And we're going to talk a lot more about this in a while. But let's ask Carlo to go into introducing our guest.
Yeah, so my name is Carlo Mostoles. So I am, before I introduce our guest, a little bit about me. I'm an electrical engineer by profession. I come from a family business. We're an electrical contractor in the Philippines, 32 years. So I've spent 16 years, my entire career basically, in the family business. And I have seen also my fair share of ups and downs in terms of, the digitization or digitalization approaches in the industry. I have maybe a unique take on some of these aspects. So enough of that. Let's introduce now our guest for this episode of the podcast. So we have here today Rain Villanueva.
Yes.
Planning and Project Control Manager at Community Developers and Construction Corporation, or CDCC, which is a subsidiary of FINMA. So welcome, Rain.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here. So actually, I'm not anymore the Planning and Project Control Manager of CDCC. I recently transferred as the Division Head of their construction management.
Congratulations.
Promotion.
Yeah.
See what technology can do. Okay. So would you like to tell us a little bit more about, where did you grow up and, what got you into the construction business?
Actually, I came from Bulacan and all of my study life is from Bulacan. Actually, Malolos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I am a graduate of the Bulacan State University. I'm a civil engineer.
Okay.
I'm registered also.
Okay.
And actually, I came from a family of whose line of work is also in the construction industry.
Okay.
So my titos and titas are mostly architect, while my dad is a civil engineer also.
Okay.
So, true blue Bulakenyo, very mild-tempered people, I suppose, as other Bulakeños I know. So you don't seem angry even if you're angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need that in construction, isn't it?
Yes. Actually, especially if your line of work is in the field.
Yeah.
Right. So that's nice to find out that we share a bit of because we coming from a family business.
Yes.
My dad's an engineer. My uncles are engineers and architects.
You're a mechanical engineer.
Electrical engineer. Yeah.
Okay.
Then my brother is mechanical engineer. My brother's an architect. So it's really, I learned construction basically from the dinner table. So I suppose that's
Actually, it's
the
the same
for you. So it's day in and day out on your kids. That's all about that you talk about at home. And back then, I guess, when safety wasn't still a bit of a culture, we as kids can also still visit the site and see what's going on. And that's somehow where we learn construction from. And maybe that drew us to getting into the industry.
Yes.
And in that sense, looking back at that, maybe we can say that not much has changed.
Yeah, but before I go there, I would like to know, so what was just after graduating, what was your first job like? What were you doing?
Actually, after I graduated, I started with FINMA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, as a project development staff. And
Okay.
then later on, during my tenure with FINMA, I used to do business development, actually, more on the business development side of things during my project development days. So
Okay.
acquiring properties, doing the due diligence for,
Feasibilities and all of
feasibility
those.
studies for all those properties. And then I later on transferred to EEI, and then I became a planning and project control engineer of EEI. I handled one of their infrastructure project, the SM200 plant. It's a coal-fired power plant in
So from housing industry
to infrastructure.
to infrastructure,
Yes.
factories.
Yes.
Power plant.
Power
which
plant.
is a whole
Then
different
later
animal.
on, my boss in FINMA knew that I was in Manila, so he invited me for lunch. Then later on that day offered me to go back to his company. So I accepted it. So I went back to FINMA again. Then my role that time was I think engineering supervisor. So
Okay.
I manage a group of engineers who's doing the design work and design coordinations
Okay.
to the consultants. Then after that, later on became their technical officer for their construction division. And then after that, to planning and project control of the construction division of FINMA Properties, and that group later on was spun off to its to a separate entity late 2021, and I was instrumental during that span off, and I got the position of I was the head of planning back then, and then right now I handled their construction management division for CDCC.
That's like you covered a whole lot of different areas in
Yes.
the business, isn't it? You kind of saw it. You started your career by looking at it from the point of view like how to choose the site, what is feasible, what is not, what the market can take, etc. And then you got into with the infrastructure project. You were a site engineer.
Yes.
So you literally got the experience of managing people,
Correct.
managing schedules, managing materials, everything. And then after you came back,
Design.
that's
Design.
going back to the pre-construction and design, and that's like, so okay, whatever you kind of thought of, and then during your site engineering, whatever you thought how the design wasn't
Yes.
done well, now you got an opportunity to kind of check on
tweak
that
on it.
and do the right thing. And then after that you move to the project management side.
Yes.
Okay, so that's
That's
yeah.
a
So the only thing you haven't done
good
yet,
spectrum.
Actually, post-construction.
Post-con, yes. The facility management
Yes.
side of
right,
it.
right.
Yeah.
But that's probably a retirement job.
So I guess that's where we shared a bit of a history.
Okay.
Not sure if because I was still a student back then when my old man was designing for FINMA.
Okay.
Wow. That's a long time ago. So we did some of their projects in Cebu, Quezon City. But we transitioned from design into construction because, there's more money there. There was opportunity. There was a good opportunity also back then. This was in the early 2000s. And so, that's like he went through a good spectrum of, albeit going back and forth, the different phases of the project life cycle. So I think we'd have an interesting discussion with Rain today with regards to his take on the digitization of construction in the Philippines.
So, but generally, like I guess out of these three different phases of projects, of course, the first one is more of finance and market studies and feasibility side and all. So that one I would touch much. That's the business side of things. But when it comes to the site engineering side versus when you were in the design and versus the third phase where now you're in the project management side, where did you find the most technology?
Actually, on the design part.
Right. That's my experience too, right?
Likewise, I mean,
more on the planning stages.
That's where all the technology focuses on. That's the, it's kind of in the office and, I still remember putting some 5 or 7 floppy disk in the green monitor to boot up the CAD or the STAD program where, you do the structural analysis using that. Well, that has moved. The computers have progressed a lot, but it seems like that's where the technology is still concentrated a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more of like just how it became de facto. Before it's CAD, but some people are still doing manual drafting. And then it just had permeated everywhere.
Right.
Became the new standard, but the standard itself did not really improve much. Maybe the drawings has got better, the details have improved, but in terms of how it's utilized in the field, not so much.
Yes.
And that's interesting, right? I mean, what's your take on that? Like, why do you think like the site engineering or the project management aspect did not catch up as much? Because, obviously it's not the technology. The digital technology has moved a lot, right? I mean, what we can do on a phone is amazing today. And the internet, like in the last at least 5 to 10 years, is like everywhere nearly. And now it's Starlink. Obviously, there's no excuse for not having internet anywhere at all, right? So, but the adoption has been low. So, what do you see from your past? Not now. I mean, I know you'll get into that, talking about your own efforts to digitize things and all. But like when you were on the receiving end, when you just, got put on the site and you're looking at it, so were there much technology in the site engineer aspect? Like, were you using, or it was just mostly clipboards and
Excel
paper
and
form,
spreadsheets. Yeah.
So, okay, the most technology is Excel, right? Excel solves every problem in the world.
So in my opinion, actually, I think that's because of the complexity of the construction industry or the business itself, wherein our approach to execute a certain project might differ from the other. Yes. So I think the adoption.
So the cookie cutter is not. It's not like finance or accounting, which is like the first thing that got digitized, because accounting is accounting. There's no creativity there.
Yeah.
Well, there is, but we won't touch on the
creative
that's
side of topic.
The concern, I think, in the construction industry is that can we repeatedly use the digital technologies across all of the projects?
So, okay, that's an interesting point. Is it because project managers or site engineers or project engineers are left to devise their own approach, and there's no really like top down from
the
the
standard
management
approach template
on standardizing their approach to like using technologies? Like, is it more like, I find something that can make my job easy, I'll try to adopt this because this is available to me, but there is no real, push from top management or project owners themselves, like across all projects, we will use a certain type of technology because we believe in it?
I think it's both coming from the end of the owner of the proponent, and also the complexity also of the project.
Because budget cannot be an issue, right? I mean, any construction related work, I mean, of course, there's always money is always short. But if you look at a percentage and the benefit that the industry says you can have by going digital, compared to that, like the amount that needs to be spent is very minuscule compared to so many other industries, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in construction, we're talking in billions. And, what's about few 100,000 or something to improve the process where you can have measurable benefit of anything up to 5, 10, 20%, right? So why not is always puzzling, isn't it? But could it be also because, technology, while has evolved, it has evolved on the head office level, right?
It did, but of course the head office folks don't really know or experience what's happening in the ground, right? So they're a bit disconnected in a way.
Yeah. Well, not bit, I guess a lot.
Yes. Except if, there is a certain succession of people in the field going into management, but just not so often. And,
maybe it's unique for you. Like you move across, but
yes,
generally
actually,
people kind of stay in one area, isn't it?
In my experience, I think most of my colleagues stay in one area.
Right.
And if they transcend that line between, field and management, maybe they are not equipped to translate their experience in the field to solving business problems. So maybe as engineers, they can solve technical problems, but they're not really equipped.
But not business problems.
To solve business problems, or they cannot articulate it enough to decision makers.
Right.
That they are unable to defend like a solution that they think that works. And then when it comes to defending that implementation of a certain solution, they fail to defend it.
Also, maybe, could it be also because, I mean, if you look at the transformation using digital, most of the effort always has gone into the white collar area, and construction is somewhat looked as a blue collar rather. So you get it black also. I know, I still remember my days. But so it's a blue collar. While you get a lot of concentration of very well educated engineers and everyone. But the majority of the people on the site are more from the blue-collar side of things. And maybe that's one reason why the concentration of whoever builds and sells technology was not so much on the site. And that's where the focus was on the white-collar, which is the office.
Yes.
Right? So, I mean, it's also technology people like us. If we don't try to focus and solve the problem, then it will never get solved, isn't it?
And maybe also because technology is developed outside of the country. So maybe in our particular experience,
it's not applicable here in the country.
It's not 100% applicable, or maybe not even
applicable.
60-70% fit in the way we do things.
I don't know. I mean, in my experience, I have kind of gone into 3 to 4 countries where I have been involved in some or other ways with construction, and the basics remain same.
Yes.
And the same clipboard still comes up. The same roll up, the plans still come up. And so it's, it looks very universal, and the lack of digitization also seems to be universal. Of course, the very large construction projects and large companies where there are very professional, management team, they seem to have the capacity to invest, and they bring in technology, and a lot of those are US or European ones. But even if you look at when we did an interview of roughly around 30 plus companies that included in Philippines, Singapore, and India, we were quite surprised to see the level of or the lack of digitization when it comes to the site engineering and the project management aspect. The head office were like all digitized, but everything, like you said, goes back to that Excel sheet.
Spreadsheets.
And even when we spoke with one of the largest construction companies in the country, they have invested heavy on the head office. Everything is kind of, defined. Yeah, ERPs and all. And then when we're asking, so how do the data comes from your site? and you got like 50 or 100 projects going on across. Well, it's all Excel. So okay, let me now ask you another important aspect now. What was your first experience of digital technology in construction related?
Actually, I would say way back in college, we were taught of using CAD and also MS Project, basic MS Project. So I think that was
the intro.
Yes.
That's
as much as it.
Yes.
And that is as much as it went to.
Yes,
that's
actually.
as far as it went.
But in the work, so you kind of have like 4 different phases or the different areas. Where did you use the most technology? You said in the design side of things, right?
Design, and actually during my tenure as a project control engineer.
Okay.
So I used to do construction scheduling using Primavera and MS Project.
Okay, so that was when you used, that was your first introduction. And how was the experience?
Actually, it's good.
Okay.
It makes my work more efficient and actually faster also. And how do you say that? Actually, instead of using per CPM and
The old
yes,
Right.
the manual per CPM, actually
very few people would know how to do the
per CPM.
manual.
Yeah.
the schedule network and all of that.
And
so,
even if you do the forward pass, most people forgot how to do
The backward pass. The backward pass.
yeah. But if you don't do that, then it's wrong.
Right.
But it's now automated,
Yes.
digitized.
And do it.
And you
like
cannot do it to complex projects
Oh,
also.
yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
My point. 10, 20, fine. But you put in
Activities,
like
Yeah.
1,000 items and you'll go nuts. You can't finish that in like, maybe a month.
So you did MS Project or Primavera to do the planning. You send it to site. Do you ever hear back from them about?
Actually, it stays as a baseline only. It never gets updated.
So that's one of the disconnects
Yes, correct.
of how it's done. The planning engineer does the baseline schedule, and it gets to site to be implemented. Inevitably, there will be delays.
Right.
So it never
There's-
goes back to a rebaselining
Yes.
or a crash schedule or a recovery schedule
Or even all the changes.
and the changes and the progress.
Yes, correct.
So that's very common in the country. You do the schedule as part of the contract, and then that's it. People forget about it, and they just come up with their own micro schedules.
Actually, very common when you do the baselining using the MS Project, and if you're gonna send that particular file to the project site, I think the project site will just convert it into
Excel.
to Excel. Actually,
Because some of them need to tie it up with the billing, and they
Right.
don't know how to tie up the billing with
the MS Project.
MS Project. They don't know how to do the.
I guess the other problem is changes are so common in construction business, right? I mean, it's like,
it's almost a given that
and yet the plan never gets changed that easily. So after a while, it's kind of that baseline loses significance, right? So it
Correct.
kind of takes a life on its own. It starts growing into another monster altogether from what it was, right?
Yeah, so it gets actually relegated to just a contractual
Yeah.
matter that people needs to sign off. And then at the end of the day, again, part of the culture, it's let's just talk about it at the end.
I mean, of course, this is not every company.
Not every company.
A lot of them are trying to and doing better. But if you leave things to its own course, this is how it kind of seems like how it becomes.
Yes. And so now it becomes a huge thing to unpack, and makes it a bit now difficult maybe for other people to get started with digitization.
And I think, what Rain started by the discussion with like no two projects are same.
Exactly.
So that
Unique.
has that uniqueness probably is one of the biggest reason it never got where it should have been, right? And to connect, and also, the other thing I was reading about some time ago, like compared to all the different other businesses
Like manufacturing
or anything,
operation.
it's so projectized, the construction, and so many different parties, and each party the role they played in the previous project may
It's
not
different.
be very
same,
different, right?
yeah.
I mean,
Probably different,
sometime you are like, you are the main contractor, sometime you're the subcontractor, sometime you're just involved more on the design, sometime you're just doing some part.
Right.
And you kind of, it's hard to put a finger on like what exactly, in general terms, what one company does or what's specialized. But down the line, that line gets blurred, or sometimes it's like there are more than one of the same industry working, same specialization working in one project because it's just too big or whatever it is, right? So that's an important point. Maybe that's one reason things kind of got stuck where it is. So going back to your that first experience of, so this is the section where we ask like what made you a believer, right? Like believer in digital technology, because it's like there are this lot more people in construction who would rather stay miles away from technology when it comes to dealing with technology on the field, because a lot of them, their experience or their approach is like it's a distraction, it's going to make me more delayed, it's going to add me more
Just gonna
things.
add to my tons of work that's already there.
Yeah. So
Added cost.
so what made you dig deeper, find out more about it, and actively look at adapting technology as you grew and as you became a decision maker?
Actually, I would say that since I'm a Gen Z, I consider myself as a Gen Z. I grew up with Windows 95 and the dial-up connection days. In my opinion, that's the start of the digital boom,
Yes.
using those technologies.
Agree.
So I would say that I like what the technology does.
The potential.
Yes,
of it.
and the potential also. And I've experienced both doing manual things and using digital technologies, and I prefer the digital one.
Okay, so that's like the inherent. You were sold to the magic early on.
Yes.
When the internet became real, and that's very similar to even my experience, because that's some 95 to 97, 98. It seemed like it can do magic.
Yes.
Not everything that we all thought of or what we were promised became real, but it took like 20 years after that. But it's now we are seeing a lot of them coming to. But Carlo,
The
you might
pace
be
is faster.
you might be in your shorts then, right?
Yes. I am a student, 96, our first computer, 386.
Okay.
That's my first experience with AutoCAD. So
Did you need floppies or
20 floppies.
Oh, there you go.
20 floppies to install AutoCAD Release 11 back then.
So did it have a hard disk or you loaded it
It's
to
a
memory?
40 MB hard drive.
Okay, so at least you had a hard disk. On our time,
No hard drives.
There was no. Yes, it was. You had to load it to the memory.
So yeah, that's my introduction to technology, which is pretty early. Pretty early actually, even for our business.
Right.
But then it stayed like that for a long time. It stayed like that, and then just the office, word processing and then spreadsheets, and then for a long time it's really that. And only fairly recently did our company go into using BIM.
BIM.
Yes.
Okay.
And also using collaborative
Approach.
versions
Okay.
of Excel. Because you use Excel, but they're all standalone files. And then you send them back and forth by email. So maybe right now in the Philippines, the next evolution of using Excel
SharePoint.
is SharePoint. Excel files in SharePoint. And so that's the next evolution now. So you don't have to send it back and forth through emails. You end up with 100 different versions of the same file. You don't know which one is.
Can you imagine trying to manage everything on like emails and
And
Viber?
Viber.
And that apparently is the standard. Every other company we talk to, it seems like they have been trying to manage since COVID using Viber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, photos, and how do you even search for them?
And then after a few months, the photo is gone. So
Actually, that happens with Viber, right? They
Viber,
delete it or something like
yeah,
that.
it's no longer available in the server. So if it's not in your phone,
Guys.
tough luck. Right.
And projects don't get over in 2 months, right?
No, they rarely do. Projects that will require that amount of record keeping rarely do get completed in a month or two. So So yeah, that's the next evolution of technology usage.
So talking about collaboration, on your side, Rain, what was your first more proper tool for collaborating across different stakeholders, maybe, and different project
Actually,
members?
until now, it's usually emails.
Wow,
Yeah.
that has remained to be the main workhorse.
Yeah.
Yes.
The formal communication, formal way of communication.
Still emails.
Yeah.
Maybe for us, we've been involved in some of the larger projects that would use an electronic document management system. So like Aconnect and all those sort of just project documentation.
Right.
And nothing much.
Shared documents
Yes.
so that anyone who has access can pick up. So, instead of sending those blueprints all over the place and
Yes.
printing them over.
And then just to put a record of who received the documents, more of a contractual or risk reduction.
But when it comes to bringing it to the site, it's still printouts.
printouts.
Yes, print out.
Now, can you imagine that? How many would you need, right? In any medium-sized project, also there are like thousands.
And then of course it defeats the purpose of being up to date, because once you print out something, it now becomes prime for obsolescence.
Right.
When it's used in the field, I mean, I'm sure you've encountered this, Rain. You print the document and there's a revision. Maybe you send it by email. Some of the people has the latest version,
Some of
but
them.
people on the site implementing it are still looking at an older version. And then further down the process, it's a quality control problem now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Instead of a quality assurance or a design issue, now becomes a quality control problem when they implement something that's already obsolete because it was printed out. No chance to really make sure everyone is updated real time.
So I happen to know, of course, that you're using the platform now, and you're while you haven't adapted all the different aspects that are possible, but what got you to consider going for a construction management platform?
Actually, it's more on collaboration and faster approach of things.
Okay.
So before especially for Steer, actually we've implemented the materials management module first for that one, because our main goal for that is to monitor our inventories before we're doing it manually, and every month our accountants and the inventory clerk goes to site and actually physically count all the inventories.
Stock take.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of time actually. Took us around 3 to 5 days just to count the inventory per month.
And to think of it, like in construction, materials are like 60% plus of the cost, isn't it?
Correct.
So, not having a good grip on it can be quite a difficult situation.
Yeah, especially for like large scale or horizontal developments or housing or multi-units where you have a lot of the same material that you use over and over.
And then you probably move around from one to the other.
Yeah. And you'd have to replenish because you can't store everything on site and so on. So that becomes now an instant nightmare for not only for site people but also for top management.
Especially during year end when the audit comes.
Audits. Yeah.
I mean, we went to the deep end on researching on these materials on site, and there are so many papers from Indonesia, Turkey, US that they have done very thorough research to find out that you can easily save from 5 to 10%, 5 to 9%, it says, on material cost. But just going digital, just having a digital system that allows you to manage it in a proper way can give that much benefit, and the cost of that is like paid off very quickly. I mean, this is not even talking about the efficiency. Like you said, it takes 5 days to count the items and all. Those are additional costs. This is just pure cost saving on materials. And yet, the adoption has not been that great. So I also know that, without mentioning any brand, before you went to Steer, you tried another product for some years.
Yes.
How was that experience, and what went well and what did not go well?
Actually, I would not mention the name of the product. And during the setup days, I was involved with it. I think during the setup, it's good. It's doing good, but by the time it gets implemented, that's where all the problem came up.
Why?
I think it's more on the disconnect between one process to another, wherein the champion to do the digitalization efforts for one particular process don't know what will happen next to that process.
So is it like, should just trying to unpack that statement, is it also related to what you are saying, like the complexity is and it's not like same in one project to the other? Is that also
actually that's also one of the reason? So I'm thinking of the specifically for the procurement process, wherein what they did during the setup days was to implement a pro forma BOQ, and
so it's like a standard.
Yes,
but
and
that doesn't work.
actually it doesn't work.
Yeah, so going back to the concept that each project is different. So
the cookie cutter doesn't work.
Yes, actually.
So now what happened is that something was implemented supposedly to solve the problem, but then it became the problem. Is that
correct?
Okay, so that's
and then it's not so easy to modify it.
Yes,
Because even if you modify it for the next project, then the third one might not work again.
correct.
Okay, so that
And to modify it, you have to pay again the
the cost aspect, of course, remains. But even if you can justify the cost by saying, okay, you'll save, but it just not easy, and it takes time. Maybe by the time you modify, it's obsolete or the project is halfway done.
Yeah. And all the problems have already piled up.
correct.
You can't even catch up with the backlog that you have maybe in terms of complying with the process after you've done the revisions. Then maybe it's time to revise again to fit the requirements of another project.
So is this more or less what you hear about from others in the industry? I'm sure you talk to other project management heads and directors and others. Is this like typically what happens when they tried implementing?
I think so. Most of my colleagues who I have talked to, I think they've done some digitalization efforts, but they are doing it one time, big time, and I think that's the problem of doing it.
So okay, that's a very interesting one, right? The approach of how do you go about it? Because a lot of systems were designed during the ERP era, and how ERPs used to be implemented like a big bang, as you say.
Correct.
If you try to do that in construction, that can become an obstacle on its own.
Correct.
Because it going digital can be very disruptive. You changing the process, you're training people, and they're kind of being off from whatever they're supposed to do, and then everyone has a deadline that has been written before the contract got done, and now you're kind of trying to push something new. So that's so other than the technology, the change, the adaptability, it's also the nature of how the software can be implemented. If it can be a bite size with the appetite that you have, and while you can still do bite size, can it connect and grow as you go through the other
sort
process?
Of defining how much you can absorb at any given time to make sure that it gets adopted.
And they like it's always said, right? Nothing sells better than success stories. So even within the organization, if you can show success in one department or one project, everyone thinks
people
like
start talking about it
Correct.
and wanting that for themselves as well.
Yeah. I mean, why would anyone want to stay behind, right? But then if everyone is in pain, then
And everyone wants to stay away from it.
right. Okay. That's actually that matches with several of our own study. Like the point of need for modularity, the need for early success. In fact, we were looking at this article on TechCrunch written on 2019, which said like despite all the hype, why construction tech is not getting to be that successful. And some of these points were literally written down on that, like, this is what is holding back, like, how do you justify the cost? How do you do it small and then grow it from there? How do you build on early success? And many and also that other point you raised, that was also written there, which is like, you need to basically be flexible enough.
Yeah.
Every project needs that flexibility,
and each company does business their
Differently.
own particular way, and then all down to the people who also have their own way of doing things. So it's a lot to consider, I guess, not only for a solution, someone who develops a solution, but also to the person deciding which
organization.
solution to use and then how to implement that. So in a way, they also have to customize how the solution is implemented per company.
Last Friday, I was talking to a gentleman, and they this was like, when we were talking with them, this was their third attempt. They have spent big money on 2 big brands and tried it over the last 4 or 5 years, and yet the adoption was zero. Absolutely no one
Wanted to use it.
While all of the systems were amazing, high tech. Like one is like, you see how it does the risk management and all. You go, wow, this is
All
like,
the bells and whistles.
yeah, it has all of that, except
No one wants to use it.
site engineers and the site people
No
said,
one's-
forget, if you are going to force me to use it, then don't ask me for the schedule. Everything will go off. And end of the day, that's what takes the lead, right? The business takes the lead.
Yeah.
If you say the business will be affected,
Then
everyone
everyone
backs.
hands off and backs away, and then that's where it starts to like have a domino effect
Right.
down the line towards the success of any endeavor.
Let me ask, in that line, another important aspect that we came and how you have been dealing with that, which is the change management. People are averse to anything
Change.
new. Anything new, even if it is good. I was just talking to someone, one of my team on the design side, and they were saying like, so people were used to, certain client implementation. They're used to using clipboards, and in that clipboard, that for particular form, they write it down, like whatever they have to write. Instead of that, now, because we are standardizing it, so one thing we do is we try to make it as close to the old form, so the learning curve is less. But other than that, well, what we did is there was a drop down menu where they can choose, instead of earlier how they used to just write it down.
Yeah.
And that was a factor of resistance. They were saying like, why does it have to be a drop down? Why not how I used to? But they say, hey, it's going to be hard to type it on an iPad, right? So my point of bringing this up is, any change is hard.
Correct.
And there would be certain amount of resistance. So how did you go about dealing with this as a manager, rolling out digitization? And since you have already successfully rolled out for certain number of functions, what's the magic there?
I think I don't know if you know the idea of John Cotter, of idea of the first follower, wherein you have to if you have an idea, sell it to someone who might support it first.
Okay.
And then,
The first believer,
yes, the first believer, so that you can gain,
allies.
yes, allies to support your idea.
Okay. So basically chip it away
Yes.
little by little.
Yes.
So don't try to go for the toughest one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let them be. You try to find those who are,
Make
more
allies
open.
first.
Make
Yeah.
allies
So
first.
like a core group
Mhm.
that
will support.
you.
And that has worked.
Yeah, for me.
Okay. And so can you expound a little bit on that? Like, among the listeners who might be also dealing with that, what are the key things they need to remember, and how do they identify these allies, and how do they expand that tribe?
I think specifically for digital transformation, and in my experience, I would normally pick the younger generation,
Okay.
mainly the Gen Zs, basically the newly grads, they are more receptive to change, and
they don't know any better either.
yes. And I would leave most of the older generations to
Slowly.
yes.
Okay. So they may in their mind they can get the idea, but to change is harder for them. So they can join after they have seen the success with the others. Okay, that does make sense. Now, how important is senior management support when it comes to digital transformation?
Actually, for me, that would be very important.
One of the most important.
Yes, actually, they are the decision makers, and they're the ones approving your digital transformation efforts.
Yeah, because Carlo, when we were talking in the class and all before, also in my own experience, and not even construction, but in general, there are several things that can be grassroots level,
right?
But not digital transformation. The first believer in the company has to be
the
one at
guy.
the top.
Yes,
and then they have to choose the right whip who can now bring it down, right?
More so for organizations like in construction existing for several decades.
Yep.
We were built to be manual.
Yeah.
Most of the work is manual anyway. So
and when you're used to dealing with labor, you know how to.
Right.
So you form that thick skin.
Yes. So there's no easy way to do digitization in construction because a lot of it has to be done by hand.
Yeah.
Blood, sweat, and tears, even. And so yes, you need to find that someone who will, who knows how to talk the language of the field.
Yeah.
I'd say, and also talk the language of management.
Yeah.
To connect the two together.
That's so true. Like, I mean, I that reminded me of my experience in Nepal when I was doing projects. So, it was cold, super cold. Like, when in the morning we go to the site, there was like a slice of ice on the water. And so the natural tendency is you put your hands in your pocket, right? But then when you're trying to guide or ask the progress and all of the, the workers, they would say, oh, why do you care? You can put your hand in your pocket. You look at us, it's so cold.
Right.
So then we put a conscious effort when working there not to put our hands in the pocket, even if it is cold. And that's kind of goes to that you have to look relatable. You have to speak in the same language. You need to do the things in a way that they can appreciate, and then only they will trust you. So that is a big jump from digital. Though we're not really asking
This is the people side of the transformation, I'd say.
Yeah.
So not only talking the language of engineers, the language of tradesmen, but also talking the language of generations.
Yeah.
Maybe the Gen Zs.
One of
I
those
tend to
alphabets.
forget, but the younger ones would easily pick up the acronyms.
Yeah.
Would easily pick up the lingo, but the older guys who are actually experts, the experts in the field, now find themselves trying to catch up with technology.
And they're the decision makers, right?
Yes, and then so you have to do a different hand-holding or a different, approach to them because, yes, they are experts. Maybe you can touch on their expertise and then bring them to the fold by helping them realize their expertise can also be seen by, these younger people, and then bring them together. Find a way for them to have a commonality. So to get them talking on the same level, little by little, have that core, the young people maybe, and then, bring in someone more senior who's in between the generations that can get a quick grasp of both and also being respected by, the older guys, and then, get them to talk about.
How about the decision process of choosing a tool and technology where you also involving some number of people, uppers and those who are going to implement?
Yes.
So that also is probably important, is it?
Yes.
Like, because that's once you have some say in the decision, maybe that you have a buy-in also coming in from there. So what else? What other tips would you want to add for anyone, who is thinking of implementing digital? If there is anything else from
Actually,
your own
tips, I would say I'm thinking of two actually.
Okay.
One would be VOC, or the voice of the customers.
Okay.
Not necessarily the end user customer
Right.
of the
Internal.
product. Yeah, the internal customer, wherein you must consider their ideas and how they want the system to work.
Okay.
At the end of
So
the
that
day,
means
they're-
adaptive. It has to adapt to make their life easy.
yes,
Not
correct.
make it harder.
Yes. Why go digital if
Yeah,
if that's gonna make
exactly.
your life
Yeah.
harder? And then the second one would be the Kaizen, or the agile approach of things.
So incremental.
Yes, small incremental things. Do not do it.
Continuous.
Yes,
Yeah.
and continuous improvement.
Yeah, that might not be the best thing the sales team from a software company
Yeah.
wants to hear, like a little bit at a time. But if that's what makes it, because remember I was telling you about that gentleman and their two failed implementers. So what he said is, Arup, construction management platform is like gym membership. I said, huh? So he said, well, it's like gym membership because you don't have to convince me that it can do great.
Yeah.
Except like gym membership, we all take the membership and then we
Never use it.
end up
Yes.
using it.
Never end up getting buff and
So that made me think that actually, and the reason is that while the boss is convinced, he's ready to cut the check, but then if everyone along the line is not involved, so this time on when he started talking to us, we had like a huge room full of some 15, 20 people. He kind of got every department involved. And they were asking, it was like a whole court interrogation going on about every aspect, every screen, every can I do this? Who can change it and whatnot, which was interesting. So I guess that kind of connects with what Rain also is talking about, involving them and making sure it makes their life easy,
Yes.
not harder.
So I guess in the voice of the customer, you actually implemented or used this approach towards selling
Yes.
the solution.
Because they're actually involved in making the system.
Did you do that in town hall style, or you went department
table,
by
department.
Actually,
or-
department to department,
or
table to
team
table.
by team, right? So you got to
I
that.
don't think town halls work.
Yeah. So not like that.
It's a
panel
waste of time,
interview.
actually.
Yeah. So that's a better approach, is to go down to on the
Personal
level of
level.
Yeah,
personal level.
personal level.
And then do you have to bringing it back full circle by calling everyone in and then showing the results, and then cross matching or doing some prioritization of which is the most important features, or you just went back to the solution provider and then told them the individual requirements?
Actually, it's more on the decision of the team wherein we identify what's our priority first.
So you
Based on the level, based on the challenges we're currently facing.
So it's your team now who made the decision
Yeah.
of which are the priority features.
get
or
their
requirements. All right.
Yeah, that's interesting. And this is where things go wrong, right? I mean, you could choose the best technology and software, but then if the buy-in is not there, if they don't see it as something that's supposed to make their life better, they will find 500 reasons why not to use it, right? And then they will give the excuse that if you ask me to use it, then the project would be delayed or payment would be delayed or whatever not, and you will say, okay, whatever, just get it done however you do it.
So I'll go back to what you said. And you did the voice of the customer. You identified the users. You brought it to the solutions provider. They said, okay, we can do that. Then did you bring the same statements or requirements up to management for them to analyze and take a look at it? That okay, this is what the departments want. Does it match with what we want for the business? And did that approach help to selling that to the board or to
For the decision makers.
Yes.
Actually, yes, because actually the approach would be a tailored fit approach wherein the users would be the one basically setting up the system
Right.
through the help of the provider only, and then
Just like they're building it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's like it checks all the boxes, and then how quickly did the decision come about to okay,
To implement it.
Yeah.
Actually, that's the hard one because as I would say, most of the decision makers are from the older generation, and you really have to present the idea. You really have to basically do PowerPoint presentations, make it visual to them, and make them realize that we have to do this.
And it's like a new spending, right? It's a new spend. How do you get it back?
Because I think from the older generation's point of view, there's a mentality wherein why change if it ain't broken?
And we've done it like this for several decades. Why do we have to change it? So sort of like now developing a sense of urgency maybe in their minds. And then I guess connecting it to a real business problem, which they can relate to. And then that, okay, this will solve our business problem about, material costs or managing change. Compliance.
And especially when you're talking to top management, you really have to present always with the cost.
Yes, because that's maybe the primary concern, managing the profitability of the business. So I guess if you can relate it very clearly, but not so detailed, I guess.
Yeah, it has to be brought to a level where it can be easily understood, because otherwise you'll lose their attention. Yeah. This is one of the many things they are worried about anyway, right?
Yeah, so I guess for our listeners who would be faced with the same dilemma or in the same position as Rain was before when they're trying to sell it to top management is that, get that sense of urgency of why we need this.
Yeah.
And then what business problem this is solving.
Yeah.
And if you can match it with actual savings,
cost data,
figures, or cost data,
ROI,
then I guess that would help them to present a solution, not just a particular platform. I guess it would be for any solution, not even maybe even not the most high tech solutions out there, to help their top management come to a decision quicker, because somehow if the business problem is so big. And they sit on the solution or the decision for too long, then they continue to incur, the losses that they're actually incurring.
In fact, like the jokes going around that the best digital transformation enabler was the COVID. So, it literally forced everyone.
For main office, yes, in construction, but on site,
not so much. But the bosses got to use Zoom first time, right? I mean, at least Zoom.
They got to use Viber.
And they or even Dropbox or whatever shared, Excel sheet or something like that, and that was like, okay, this can be a new way of working. I guess.
They started with fumbling with, video on or mic on, unmute, and then fumbling with it and all of that.
But that's important, right? It kind of breaks that ice. Yes. It kind of, get them introduced to the new technology. So once you take away that one layer of hesitation, then they're more open.
Yeah.
And they're saying like, okay, I heard there's so many more things. Can we explore further?
Yeah, and then it's important now that we grab that opportunity, because people are sliding back to, how
even with the digital wallet payment. So a few months ago, I could pay every parking. Now apparently not. They're rolling it back. They still want cash, and I haven't gone back to cash in that time. That's a problem.
So I guess the same thing is also happening. People are using a lot of video conferencing during time of COVID, especially to run meetings, project meetings. But now people are going back to face-to-face. And so I guess there's an opportunity there that we should not lose, to bring the decision in
At
front
least
of
those who are trying to roll it out, there's no time to lose there before everyone goes back and settles back
and
to
forgets that, this is what happened. And,
right.
Lose the opportunity of furthering the digitization of the industry.
Okay, so at this point, we'll move to the next part of our discussion. And so we'll have a short break. So the next section, we're going to talk about what you call what it could be. It's more like a blue skying about, like what this is like, thinking beyond what is available today or what is possible. Like if you were given that crystal ball to see, and if you were able to ask to have certain technology solve some of the key problems on your projects, whether it's at any phase, let's say, what would those be? Like, if you would count a few.
For me, given the boom of AI now, I would say an AI-backed solution wherein it can make a custom fit solution to our construction management needs for a specific project, tailored fit to that.
So it's like, it can easily adapt once you get, but you'll still need to give the parameters though.
Yeah, correct. So basically, you'll give the parameters to the AI. You'll communicate with the AI what you want and how you want.
So it cuts down the adoption or the customization time. Okay.
It's more like a chat GPT like of AI wherein you just have to describe your solution
Project.
or what you want to happen to that particular construction management solution.
Right. So that and it, I think, so in a way you connect back to the opening point, right? That the need is to be able to adapt, flexible, and so that when you are looking at chat GPT and what it can do, the magic that you are hoping is the adaptability and the ease of changing and adapting and flexibility. Okay, that's what anything else.
Basically, your input would be just your construction execution plan inputted.
And your prior projects, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's like a template.
Yeah.
It's like intelligent template.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. What else?
The input of basic, I don't know how can it happen. Basically, the input of the construction execution plan, and then converting it into basically a construction management solution.
You mean pre-construction drawings and schedules?
Yes, including the drawings, the schedules, the S-curve, and basically doing a solution based on that input.
When you say solution, you mean like all the task assignments according to the resource you have, etc. Okay, that's not too far away. That's more or less
pre-populated.
Yeah.
Project execution based on a template, past experience, and then give it the parameters of the new project. Okay, this is what we will do, and this is how many people we will need, and these are the roles that we have to put in place in order to say complete the job at that specific date,
right,
at that specific cost.
So I mean, I think partly from what you're saying, while we're touching on the blue skying thing, but the asks are quite regular, right? I mean, these are and that's true also. Like when we looked at a lot of the needs in the market, while people are excited about AIs and BIMs and all the IoTs and everything that can be.
Yeah, I think that the extension of that is IoT.
Yeah.
Internet of
and,
Things.
And so your AI doesn't stop at giving your execution plan.
It can track.
Works with you every day.
Yeah.
Even where you're sleeping. The following day tell you, okay, you're sliding.
Yeah.
And this is what you need to do. And then, based on your
even
past
track
experience,
the people where they are on the site.
That's where IoT comes in.
Correct.
Machine vision and all of these tracking tools.
Making sure everyone is safe. No one goes into areas that would cause some harm. I think those are areas definitely where all of this new innovation. But the thing is, we need to still have the base before you can
data. Where
So it's like you can't have the icing without the cake. Right? Okay, interesting. Any other on your side, Carlo? Anything you have been observing in the industry that got your attention, or maybe you just woke up one Sunday morning and you dreamt like there should have been something like this.
Yeah, well, maybe this for me it's an extension of BIM.
Okay.
So you have BIM right now in the Philippines 3D.
Right.
I haven't heard of anyone that used 4D or 5D.
For 5D scheduling.
It's
The
been,
4D,
it's being
the
done
schedule.
in other countries, like
Yeah.
5D for the schedule, 4D for schedule, 5D for cost.
Yeah, yeah.
But an extension of the 3D would be sort of, it's being done in games.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's being done at a certain extent for like presentations.
Okay.
The extension of it in an augmented reality space, where project owners can see
So it's like they can do virtual walkthroughs.
not just walkthroughs. Well, yes, walkthrough in a sense that you can see the project beforehand and maybe even make changes yourself,
or compare.
or compare with actual progress,
Right.
superimpose it, and it is not just in a headset
Mm-hmm.
or a phone and you're just sitting, but maybe a space or an equipment that is designed for the job where you can really walk around.
So it's like it could be like a robot that is rolling around the site
That's
and giving a virtual feel
Yes.
of doing a walkthrough.
Or maybe you can have like sort of a 360 treadmill,
right.
endless,
Walking.
endless
Yeah, they have
platform.
that in the gaming, right?
Yes,
There's
they,
that-
VR
they do have
goggles.
that in the games, and then translate that or adopt that into construction, and everyone can do
just
their
don't
walk-
have the nails there.
Yes, and it's much safer supposedly. Nothing's gonna fall on you.
Yeah.
You're not gonna trip. Hopefully, it's a safe space.
Right.
You have your guardrails and so on. And I think what it
So what does it solve? It solves the need to go and walk the site.
Safety.
and also because a lot of maybe proponents or project owners are away from site
Okay.
and they can't be bothered to go to site until it's at the very end, and they want to change things when it's actually already done.
Right, right.
And
right.
maybe they don't really get a good understanding of how it would look like or how it would perform,
Yeah.
or how they want the space to flow or be utilized. And so it should, solve a lot of issues with regards to changes
The
being
late
made
changes.
midway or towards
Yeah.
the end of the project. They're rushing to deliver the project. The contractor also wants to finish, gets the job done. At the end of the day, the project owner sees the cost and gets astounded by how much the cost took, and then it becomes now
Everyone is unhappy.
and it becomes a breeding ground for conflict. And being a member of the Institute of Construction Claims Practitioners, we advocate also conflict avoidance.
Right.
And
Which
so
is
if-
important.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
end of the day, everyone should end happy.
Yeah. Yeah, but it doesn't, it's not the case all the time. So instead of conflict resolution, taking a step back, conflict avoidance,
Yeah.
that's a tool that I think would help,
Yeah.
to bring project owners and even contractors and, come together and even do the iteration of the possible solutions
Mhm.
with less cost than doing the reworks
Yeah,
on
yeah.
site. So I think that's one of the things that I wanted to see. Before that, I
Mhm,
wanted to see like a solution that allows you to like print the whole floor
Mhm.
1:1. But I saw something in TikTok or YouTube
3D
Okay.
printing.
that like there's a robot that goes around site and prints the site,
Okay. Okay.
and you don't have to have shop drawings, or you don't have to do the measurements. You do the shop drawings digital.
Mm.
It gets approved, and the robot prints it on site. So everything, all the stakes, all the framings, all the risers, all the holes that needs to be bored, it gets printed on site. And so,
At least
in
for the
theory-
residential. That.
and yes, and even for office spaces,
Yeah. Yeah.
cold shell spaces,
Yeah.
fit outs,
Mm, mhm.
and even manufacturing plants who have less tolerance for errors in terms of utilities. For MEP, being an MEP guy,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's our usual issues in terms of for manufacturing projects.
So what you're mentioning, these are more on the BuildTech side.
Yes, the building technology side
Yeah.
side of it. So
And maybe
then-
that will save on materials also, right?
and time and rework again.
Yeah.
The rework.
Clashes are identified early on.
Yes, and then supposedly when you print it, it's clash free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the idea I have in my mind. But what's trying to solve is that sometimes the very basic measuring tape that the foreman has is not accurate anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Or they don't measure twice, or the levels references on site are different. The
Yeah.
setouts are different. And so,
I mean, this is so basic, you
very
would
basic.
think, but then in reality, those small thing adds
They
up.
add up
Yeah.
to many, many problems
Yeah.
later down the line when the finishes are being put in place, and
Yeah.
then, especially if it's a custom finish imported from abroad, doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And then you have to tear down a whole wall when everything's already almost done, and it's a nightmare for everyone. So
True.
yeah.
And that's also in line with the whole sustainability thing, isn't it?
Right.
With all the carbon zero goals that are being set. How do you do that? You have to cut down on waste of materials. You have to cut down on all this
Energy waste.
energy
That's
waste.
utilized, in,
Yep.
in doing the rework.
Yeah.
And then I guess all of these can be tied together into a construction management platform.
Yeah, I was looking at some statistics, and it says any city, any of the major big city, anywhere from 15 to 20% of the solid waste comes from construction.
Yeah.
Now, can you imagine that? That's like
There's
such
a lot of
waste.
wastage.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you do that print out of the whole floor before you start construction, maybe you can extend that to fabrication.
The rebars, actually.
Rebars, wood or steel tracks or plyboards or any other material which can now be ordered with much less contingency.
Or maybe, it can be just
Actually-
prefabs that are built and you
the entire
assemble.
thing. Yeah.
Actually, if your input is already in BIM, and maybe what we can expect is that the rebar can be fabricated already offsite and just deliver
Even
it.
sections
Yeah.
are
And
fabricated.
then the other
right?
parts can now be subjected to additive manufacturing,
Yeah.
the 3D printing.
So
and
it
sections.
reminded me of like when we used to have PCs in our early days. So we used to assemble them, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of put everything together. But now you don't even think about it. In fact, this Apple devices can't even be opened anymore, right?
Like
so,
disposable.
but maybe construction build tech would approach that someday where it's more modular.
Yeah, and I guess when that technology comes about, then repurposing spaces without having to tear them down
Yeah.
will now save on materials, save on resources.
Yeah, because if you can take it out safely and reuse, that's amazing.
Or
that,
repurpose certain spaces for new use.
yeah.
You can do conservation and sustainability together.
Like I was reading about the challenges in US, like apparently a lot of vacancy in the office space. And they don't know what to do with it because while there is like in San Francisco and all this shortage of living space, and there is excess of office space. And when they are trying to change them,
these spaces are not designed for.
that's not so easy. Like the plumbings and all the electrical and everything.
Yes.
It's a whole different game. So that's actually a good example of repurposing.
Yes, so that you can take your drawings, put it in, see if it would fit
Yep.
before you even
Implement it.
and then so that saves everyone the trouble of later on finding out this actually can't be done, or it's not as easy as we thought it would be.
Yeah. Very interesting. Lots of potential. And thanks, Rain, for all the sharing.
Thank you also.
Anything last you would want to share, add to the discussion before we say our goodbyes?
Actually, for me, I think the digital transformation is the way to go.
Okay.
Not only in construction, even in agriculture. I think all of the industry, digital transformation should be the way to go.
It's the basic how we can make things smoother.
Yes, efficient, less waste.
And towards that, the whole carbon neutral goal, right? It can be that, because today without the digital, it would be probably near impossible to achieve that target. So at least this can help in towards that side. Okay, Carlo, anything last?
So, I think on the topic of digital transformation in construction, there is no entity or stakeholder big enough to influence the motion of everything.
Right.
So it has to be a concerted effort from all of the industry
Different parties.
stakeholders, from
Right.
project owners to contractors, subcontractors, even regulators.
And technology suppliers
and
also.
the solutions providers, technology
Yeah.
suppliers, to get this moving. Because if it's only, say, a contractor side or solutions provider side that's trying to make that big push, then it's a big boulder to push before you can get that momentum rolling. So if everyone will, pitch in and get their buy-in to transform the entire industry, then it would be much, much faster for all of us.
Thank you. I think that kind of connects back the dot, and that's the purpose of our podcast. We want to kind of bring all the different parties, the thought process, the challenges to discuss here, and hopefully build that consensus and the awareness.
Still a lot to talk about.
Yeah, so this is the first one, but we are looking forward to all the other opportunities to talk about the important things. Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Ryan.
Do you want more useful insights on construction management and digital transformation? Then don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you'll get notified every time there's a new episode of the BuildTech podcast. Also, follow Connected Construction on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, and get even more useful content and connect with other digital visionaries like you.